Blessed love and peace. And voila, we have a mukbang. Actually, literally in the middle of having breakfast. Abstain from saying prayers and meditation today as properly done. And then something hits me. One nice thing about ideas when it hits you. Actually, we do feel pain. But, anyways, this is another way of looking at the whole black mix thing. What hits it is the mentality, like how to describe the mentality. And it just makes sense. It just makes so much sense now. The whole trope of gatekeeping, particularly with the younger generation that doesn't have credibility and authority and experience, is out of pocket. That mentality is the club mentality. It's the bouncer mentality of who gets into the club or not. Check ID at the door. Do they look nice? Okay, we'll let them in anyways. That's the mentality that kinfolk have in this whole black mix thing. Bouncer club mentality. There are other kinfolk who are on the kingdom mentality. And the nature of the kingdom and the nature of the club are two very different things. The club is a temporary, superficial, here and there experience. Cats are just trying to fuck. That's it. That's the club. We be clubbing. That's it. All these O'Shea Jackson references recently. Haha. Big up, peace and blessings. It's the club mentality. The kingdom mentality. And again, it's easy to say no, blah, blah, blah. There's no responsibility. There's very little responsibility. There's very little accountability. There's very little vested in the experience. It's the night, whatever. It's around for maybe, the club builds up for maybe like a year. If it's hidden, then maybe a few years, and then boom, something else. The other club jumps up. That's the mentality. But it's also, what makes sense is that it's the mentality that most young people are further familiar with about inclusion and exclusion. And the degrees of it, like, okay, kinfolk can get into the club, dress code required, age maybe, but then they can't get into the VIP. We got the VIP section, and then we got the like the off the menu VIP or whatever. So that's the experience that many kinfolk are working from, to speak with some kind of, or to think with some type of like authority based on personal experience. That's the paradigm. That's the context that people are framing life experience within, is that club mentality. The kingdom mentality is one that's much further heavy, and it's not about liberty. It's not about party and bullshit. It's about responsibility. It's about 24/7 thinking about others. The sovereign mindset. It's nasty, and it does not stop until it's done. That's the kingdom mentality. We can talk about the earthly kingdom. We don't talk about heavenly kingdom, because the heavenly quote unquote kingdom is beyond king and queen. It's a sovereignty. But for those who have that mindset, or that preceding kind of like frame of reference, that is involved in the sovereign mindset on this earth. So the difference between the club and the kingdom. And the thing about it is, when the bouncers at the club start tripping about like not letting a certain kinfolk in, the situation in this scenario is a young brethren comes up and wants to go into the club or whatever else, or solicits entrance into the facilities, and the bouncer's like, nah, not you, dude. Nah, you don't look the part. And then the brethren reveals, oh yeah, but my dad owns this building. The club promoter and all the things that are bigwigging, they're working under others. And the son comes up, yeah, this is my dad's building. Oh, exception. Shh, nah, whatever. And then inside the club, oh yeah, Kinfolk want to pull rank, pull card or whatever. Then Kinfolk, the young brethren says, oh yeah, my dad's on the police force. When things get hot, heated in the club, and they got to call back up or whatever, yeah, that's my dad on the police force. And we're not talking about United States. We're talking about Accra. We're talking about Nairobi police. Like further legit of the ilk police. Yeah, my dad's on the police force. And they want to be stingy with the bottles, the bottle service or whatever else. Oh yeah, no, that's my dad. Customs agent. Allowed all that stuff, all the beverages, all the food, the glasses, the silverware, the napkins, the table cloths, the tables, all that came from another country. Yeah, that was my dad, the customs agent, or my dad, the corporation or the company that produces those items. So all the things of the club are servile to other entities, and it can be, cats can get caught up in the imagination and the vibration of bumping in the club and just be ignorant and slave mentality of not recognizing all the things that go into that. The promoter, the management, security, everything else like that, they might see that and be like, okay, yeah, they doing their thing. But then just not wanting to see how much further there exists. And instead of like acknowledging it, just say, oh no, it doesn't exist. No. We just pretend that play game. Because that's part of the coping mechanism of being enslaved for generations, is cultivating that imagination and not wanting to see it. Because when one actually takes the blinders off and starts opening one's eyes, one sees the immensity of life. And not just a matter of like how small the slave experience is, but how much responsibility is necessary, that is involved to be free, to be liberated. When the children of Israel leave Egypt, there's no food, there's no bottles, there's no clubbing, sometimes there's no water, there's desert and affliction, trotting continually and complaining the whole time. Oh, I wish we were back there. Yeah, we were slaves, but at least we had food. We had onions and garlic and tasty things. We should go back. It's very difficult to be free, to be liberated. And so, I mean, it's not for all cats, and it's not greater than or less than. It's just facts of the nature of things. And when kinfolk like double down on the slave experience and then want to fault and devalue others, and just to be clear again, like recognize that there's multitudes of mixedness. It's not all sellout. There's real ones who are mixed, and you learn from real ones who are mixed without acknowledging that they're actually mixed. So yes, there are many sellouts. Yes, there are many betrayals. Yes, there are many assimilated and whitewashed, gray washed, black washed, whatever washed. There's that, yes, but that's not the whole of it. And when the whole of it is discounted, cats are playing themselves, short selling themselves. We do better. We can do better collectively. The challenge again is that there's an absence of a proper authority. To be clear, again, we're talking about what I'm talking about when I say black. First of all, I recognize the difference between African and black. African is the heritage. African is the ancestry. African is language. African is land. African is relationship. African is religiosity and spirituality and awakening. That continues on. Black is a mindset. Black is a necessary mindset that results from the affliction through generations, through the removal of language and religion and drum and family and knowledge of self and ancestors and religiosity and spirituality and awakening. And so black becomes a coping mechanism, and a beautiful coping mechanism that manifests tremendous treasures. However, that continue on as well. Literature, music, jazz, poetry, Harlem Renaissance. Peanuts. All that. However, at some point, there is the necessity of graduating from the affliction. There's always going to be affliction, but graduating, particularly from the plantation affliction, and truly being liberated. Juneteenth is not it, and that's part of like the pimpation that kinfolk just settle within. When did Juneteenth become a thing? Not when I was growing up. We didn't talk about Juneteenth. We was working on Kwanzaa and still like cultivating that. Juneteenth, to be honest, Juneteenth is like a bullshit crumb and that the empire throws. And it's not white people. Listen, it's empire that works through white people, so-called white people. But it's a crumb, and it was a concession to draw people's attention away. There's so much of it, drawing people's attention away from what's real Africa, and then giving it to Wakanda and what's that Coming to America joint, whatever that is. These imaginary bullshit things that people just, again, it's crack. It's cultural crack. It's civilizational crack. And cats eat it up. And then fault other people for not eating it up. Oh, you don't know about this. And it becomes so much, it becomes poisonous crack, because Coming to America is crack. And I've had that. And I can't let go. It's the part of the nostalgia. But it's still cultural crack. Do the Right Thing is maybe some lace herb. I mean, it's not as nasty as crack, but it's still laced with sexual exploitation and other things. That's part of the entertainment industry. But then when we get to the whole Medima, see, there we go, Madiba. How about that? Instead of learning, and that's the thing. You think about Black Panthers, you're thinking about an imaginary film. And there's an important reason why people emphasize film so much, because film relies upon the huge infrastructure to make a film, all the money, all the learning, the directors, the producers, and everything else like that, so that when the culture becomes film-based, feature film-based, and the celebrities and everything become like the pillars of the culture, all of that is kowtowing to the hierarchy, the corruption of society, and the leadership, the film companies, whatever. I'm not going to say the names, so I'm not going to do all the free advertising, or any advertising. But that's the reason why films are emphasized rather than stories, traditional stories, and otherwise, because those are further accessible. Those are things people can do themselves. People can't do films themselves too easy. John Singleton was maybe like a closer example, the Hudlin brothers back in the 80s and further. What do I know what I'm talking about? Hadag, all thanks and praise to the Most High. Films are less accessible for black folk, quote unquote, or African folk on this continent to do Dolo style. Legit, it can look budget. Hung Low Productions, peace and blessings, big up. That's how Spike Lee gets his start, but he already had like tutelage from NYU and further. But to attain that status of like pillar and be seen as doing things, even like as an O'Shea Jackson, it requires, yes, selling out to the corruption across the board. It's a prerequisite to get in the club. And when people get accustomed to that, that's what people value. That's what people talk about. That's what people go to school talking about, and like, oh yeah, he knows, he's seen the recent thing. He knows, he's always up on the new films and everything. That means paying homage to that corruption. And that corruption is intentionally feeding people with not just garbage, poison. And we're not talking, well, BBD, and we can talk about that too. Wada. Anyways, it's poison. It's cultural, whatever I said before. It's bad things. And when that becomes the norm of people how self-identify, it's manifested. So the alternative, the healthy version, is learning the stories, learning Like how many? I say this all the time. I've shared the stories, and it's not easy telling stories. That's the thing. It's a skill set. It's a charisma. And it's a talent, but it's also a skill of practicing. And I mean, some people do it nicer than others. But learning the Nancy stories, learning traditional stories from, there's so many rich stories. That becomes boring because people are used to like the fat, the sugar, fat, and salt of the films. When people hear like the nice, wholesome, homegrown, organic culture stories, it's like, ah, where's the special effects? Where's the titties hanging out and everything? That's crass and vulgar. That's what cats are accustomed to. At least my generation. I don't even know what kinfolk watch these days because I'm not going to go too further into that. But then that when people start to like equate that as being black in the culture, and requiring others to subscribe to that, and if they don't, oh, they're sellout. It's club mentality, and so again, peace. And we know it's not all black folk, it's not all African folk, but it's enough for it to be just a disruption, even to be still talking about it. So it becomes the point where, like, again, we've already left the plantation. But now that we're back on it, we've been forcefully brought back here by the Most High, but also by the hand of the world to be here to help guide this process of transformation of society and civilization. Um, Whilst we're still here on this perceived plantation, we're just going to be off the plantation whilst being on the plantation. And that includes the mentality and how much we how we subscribe or associate with that. And again, it's always love for Africa. It's always love for all kinfolk. It's always honoring our ancestors who go through the Middle Passage. You can't take that away from me. So I don't even know who's saying that particularly, because I know that we know in our culture as well. Our culture, oh yeah, it's been. If you're under 49 years old, it's been my culture for longer than it's been your culture. How about that? Facts. So, always love for our ancestors in the Middle Passage, and honoring that and recognizing that and continuing the legacy, the principles and the learning, the songs, the stories. That's what's up. That's what to teach. That's what to share. That's what to watch. So kinfolk can keep the black culture, have the Medea all day, and we'll focus on our healthy food. Like, this is white rice, but it actually don't got no oil or salt, and it's fantastic. Brown rice is healthier. It's also less available because it's less popular. It's less tasty. We're not hating on that. We appreciate. We give thanks and praise to the Most High. I already said blessings before. So, kinfolk are out of pocket across the board, across the continent. Kinfolk are out of pocket, and there's not the luxury of pretending at this point. I'm not trying to do the whole doomsday thing or whatever else, but just working to concentrate on the productive, or not just the positive, but the productive and the priority. So, just giving some clarification, some further, like clearness about what the mindset is, what the reasoning is, the rationale, the logic of recent articulations concerning the experience of being black. Again, we know it's not everybody. It's not even the majority of kinfolk who are in this like hate tip type of situation. But it's enough, and it's too much, and we just have to be like, we have to take care of self amidst the uncertainties. Within the black community today, we are unaware of there being like any leadership, like even proper leadership of any considerable constituency within the black community. Um, Black Lives Matter is not it. That's an example of imperialism. It's like it's not even COINTELPRO. LGBTQ is COINTELPRO. LGBTQ is today's COINTELPRO. Um, Getting in, at this point, it's a different stage of it now, but within the past 20 years or so, um, strong been the COINTELPRO, and the methodology has been ingratiating itself with certain leadership or proximate leadership within different movements, particularly black community, and additionally, mixed community most definitely is just so thoroughly co-opted. Um, and talking about allyship and working together, this, that, and the other. And then in doing that, um, changing, altering the priorities, the objectives within the different activist movements to an agenda that caters the LGBTQ community. And then when those objectives are met, it's like, deuces, nice knowing you. Ain't got nobody to blame but ourselves. So, what's the point of all that? We're talking about that. Whatever. We're into the ramble stage now. We talked for 20 minutes. I got things to do. We're into the ramble stage. So, this energy is better spent, applied to other purposes. Said basically what I had to say, particularly to like interrupt my breakfast. Stop me whilst I'm breakfasting. Um, Searching now. We do observe promise within the conditions. Amidst an increasingly opaque authoritarianism, we do evidence responsiveness that is still finding itself, searching and studying and calculating, and at the same time also responding. It has way much further to go. That's not meant to be condescending or whatever, but just to attain some to attain a proficient level of balance. Not even like a harmonious garden experience, or even like a utopian or idyllic kind of society kind of thing, but just in order to sustain its own self as it is at this moment, or as it tends to be. It has yet to attain that a proficient level of balance, of discrimination, of adjudicative discretion. Yet it is learning. When I say it, I'm talking about the sentience within the opaque authoritarianism, and it is quasi-totalitarianism, just because of how much people depend upon technology and the internet. So that opaque sentience. It's techies, but it's beyond techies too. Techies are a significant part of it, but it's beyond techies. We can talk about the soul and the spirit of techies. How about that one? Where's the Dubois for the souls of techies? Oh, excuse me. Was that a response? No, No disrespect, no cap. That's less of a low cap situation, but anyway. Um, so it's not all doom and gloom. There's always the yin and the yang beyond the will, and we evidence it. We encourage it. We acknowledge the actuality of conditions. The fact that we talk about a culture, cultivating a culture that is independent from the corruption and yet continuing to utilize devices and additionally. So we recognize there's give and take. And part of the phenomena of the sentient experience on Earth is particularly the humanoid. Wow, I'm all types of spit today. Maybe that's because I'm talking whilst I'm eating. Not the most advisable. Within humanoid sentience on Earth, there's a learning process as individuals, respectively, then also as collectives. And in that process, we gain information, we process, and then we adjust. So I was applying this to something I was just saying a second ago. So I'm not going to try too difficult in trying to like share further at this moment because, like I said, the basic gist is already shared. I'm actually trying to think if there's anything else that is suggested I share beforehand that I've yet to do so in recent, anything that's shared, considered within recent days or whatever that I've yet to share. Yeah, again, another half sleep thing, talking about being half asleep yesterday. Maybe again, protocol of the daylight. Oh, is this the triangle? The daylight. Doing things in the daylight, sharing things in the daylight. Night is a beautiful thing. Night is a beautiful energy. There's a lot of creativity at night. There's a lot of innovative thinking that helps with daylight challenges. Yet giving discourses and discussions in native tradition, when gathering together as tribes to make decisions, there is a protocol that once the sun is down, once the day is down, the daylight is down, stop, break bread, do something else, don't make decisions. Of the community, political, economic type that is with the weight of the next step 7 generations. There's an energy, there's a relationship, there's an information that is shared with the Soleil light when making these decisions, when entertaining these thoughts, when cultivating these thoughts, when articulating these thoughts. Again, facts. So, not just facts, wisdom. Lesson. Is that what it is? Yeah. Lesson. That's not the most redeeming of references, but it's there. I watch TV and film for days in the 80s and 90s. I got references for days. So, from black to white. And to be honest, there wasn't much else in the 80s and into the 90s in between the black and white in the United States. So that's much of my cultural frame of reference from that period. Now, intuitively, just like from the 90s and 2000s and further, like I got scriptures for days and teachings for days from around the world. That helps balance. But in terms of like just like accessible cultural references, Sesame Street, try to think about like trying to find something positive to wrap this up with. I missed this endeavor of concluding this joint. But what actually occurs to me is like just going in on citizenship again. And the point is not just to like ridicule and denounce and devalue and bring down people who are citizens, but to give insight so that people can recognize what the actuality is, because there's a lot of intoxication and whatever else. So to help balance a lot of the rhetoric, I'll share this insight again. It's like a summation that just is shared. I share accordingly. Share. Share bear. Hadiba. My dreads are natural. They are not twisted. Ain't no hate on twist either. On twisted hair. Braided hair. But point is, clumsily said, don't get it twisted. You are bunga tonga. Alright. So citizens, here's the thing. As much as what it's not this isn't meant as hate. This isn't intended as hate. It's a matter of balancing so that people can make better, knowledgeable, informed decisions. Knowledgeable and informed. So amidst all the propaganda concerning citizenship and additionally, not trying to go in, but like this is what a significant reason of why I'm here, literally on this land, is just to explain this, because the post-democratic era involves not just the United States but the entire world, and so the world sends me here for this purpose of facilitating the post-democracy experience in the United States, that facilitates appropriate unfolding worldwide. So again, just understanding the nature of citizenship. People talk about individual liberty, and people talk about sovereignty. People talk about rights. People talk about the extinguishing of feudalism. That's some of what the purpose of the modern democracy is described as. What a beautiful sentence, ending with a preposition. Presumably, preposition. So, and there's the actual legitimacy within those claims, but that's not all that it is, because at the same time, there's a flip side. So, citizenship is enslavement, because every citizen agrees to abide by the will of the other citizens, for better and for worse. So when that's enslavement. That's working for somebody else. That's being enslaved to another collective of selves. And it might be easier to swallow because it's not one individual ego officially and perennially, perpetually submitting itself to another individual ego, with or without the prospect of being eventually in future generations merged or otherwise. So there's an absence of that, but it's one ego, each individual ego submitting individual ego selves to the collective of the other egos. So it's still enslavement, but it's easier to like for a man to rationalize, because I'm not a slave to any one man, but maybe a slave to 2 or 3, but they're lesser. That means that divided by 50%, that means they're 50% of a man, so it doesn't matter, whatever. That's the logic that allows that enslavement, that subordination. So and in many ways it's a pragmatic logic. It's a fallacy. You call it a pragmatic fallacy, but literally, but that's what it is that allows men to do that. Just like saying like many men find it easier to take a command or be or acknowledge like subservience to a woman rather than another man because, well, it's a woman. So yeah, I still have a penis and this, that, and the other. So she can do what she want to do. It's just not another man. There ain't no other man gonna tell me what to do. Da 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 da. So, and that's a little bit. That was a little bit graphic, but the influences. The influences. I'm the one to blame. I am the one who's responsible. So, and all of the above. A citizen is a slave, by definition. The second thing is that not only is a citizen a slave, but it's like the both. It's the worst of both worlds because a citizen is a slave, by definition, and a citizen is guilty, by definition. So, whatever afflictions, atrocities, and wrongs that the collective, the government, or whatever else commits, killing, raping, pillaging anybody else, each citizen is responsible. Each citizen is guilty. Don't play yourself. Every citizen is guilty of every crime. How many people have you killed today? How many people have you killed within the past month? That's facts. It's a factual question. It's a relevant question. As a citizen, every citizen is guilty. And in the scenario of a king, I mean, we can talk into like the cosmic spiritual sense of everybody being guilty and everything that happens, and then again we get into that pimp talk right there of just like it's not a lie, but at the same time it's skewing the actualities and the spirit of what we're told and what we're taught. So, in a feudal system with the serfs or with people who work for a king, the king is the kingpin. The king is numero uno. In that pyramid scheme or whatever else. All the dirt and everything that the kingdom does is on the king. The slaves are still culpable because slaves eat off it and feed off it. But in terms of having the ownership of the decision making, and additionally, slaves didn't have a voice properly in that methodology. By definition, some slaves can be very influential otherwise, but that's an exceptional thing. But as a rule, slaves don't have the guilt that the king does in the decisions that the king and the kingdom make, and that's different from the citizens. So, the other thing also, as I mentioned, I was alluding to before, is that in that feudal system, there's one of the things that influences people to buy into another man's kingdom. If it's a court, if it's like officers or whatever else, one of the things that like influences men to acknowledge the sovereignty of another man over their own, and that's enslavement. We can nicen it up and call it servitude, but it's enslavement. And one of the reasons why other men agree to that, other than the corporate democracy kind of thing, the reason why other men buy into it is because there's the long vision of like saying, okay, well, this is the king this generation, but I'm building for my progeny, I'm building for my seed. And so I'll stay close, I'll be part of the court, and then what are the rules? What's the rules of ascension and everything else like that? And so perhaps in the next generation or in the next few generations, one of my children will marry into the family and become a monarch, and then my seed will become the epitome of society. That's what precipitates, that's what influences kinfolk men to acknowledge and even bow to a king. Within our thing, just to be clear, we don't bow to others in that kind of subservient thing. We bow to acknowledge the presence of God within everybody. But in terms of like an earthly bow and those formalities, just with all due respect, we're prohibited from doing that. So, but that is what is involved in the earthly kingdom and the earthly sovereignty. And one of the reasons why men are resigned and accept those conditions is because of the perceived eventuality. In the citizenship scenario, there isn't that perception. There's the perception of like maybe one day somebody being a president, but for those who know, that's not the epitome of the democracy, at least in the U.S. version of it. It is the citizen, and the citizen is continually a slave, and at the same time the citizen is continually guilty. In a kingdom, the slave is continually enslaved, with the hope of eventually at someday rising through the ranks, and but the slave is not guilty to the same extent as the king is, as a political government leader. Um, so because of that, when kinfolk recognize that, like, wait, citizen is a slave, and a citizen is guilty, ah, hey, nah. But the thing about it that keeps kinfolk in it is that the citizen is rich. The citizen is paid. And so that keeps the citizen's mind off what's actually going on. And even if when the citizen doesn't have the same stack as other citizens do, that's where the focus is. Maybe one day I'll have a house like that. Don't want a house like that, but that's what the mindset is. And even the kinfolk who are at the bottom of the bottom, there's still that dream of rising through the material hierarchy. Um, make them further comfortable. Make them shut up. It's very difficult to keep away. So, anyways, that's some of the thoughts. So the citizen is a perennial slave, a perpetual slave, as long as the citizen is part of the citizenry of the state. The citizen is guilty, and the citizen is rich. There's the rub. So, um, it's for each one to do the mathematics. When the state is crumbling, then that richness might be less available, it might be less convincing, it might be less intoxicating and tempting. And when there's some sobriety, then people become further aware of the enslavement and the guilt of what the state is doing, and thus further refusal of contributing and even partaking from that. So, the food, like as I mentioned, I'm partaking of it not even as not a non-citizen. So there's guilt in this too, but we minimize as much as possible. And anyway, that being said, that was something nice and positive. Sparrows are eating rice. I say that regularly. Oh, and hallelujah. Sunshine is shining. It's probably going to get warm. We can expect that. The clouds are comparatively dispersed, intermittent, chilling still, puffying up. At some point, that's going to be less of a charged word. But blue sky, light blue sky, white puffy clouds, green leaves, sunshine, sunshine, sunshine. And all thanks and praise to the Most High. Blessed love and peace and Rastafari.